Paging Neil Matthews. Paging Neil Matthews. We have a new patient for X-ray. Hello, I've paged our host, Neil Matthews. He will be right with you. In the meantime, please find a seat, take a deep breath, and relax. Welcome to Season 19 of Other People's Shoes, called X-ray. We're exploring what we call sight beyond sight, taking a deep look into the unseen damage and aspects of people's lives. We hope you leave today with encouragement, advice for facing similar challenges, and even a perspective shift. After hearing from our guests, we hope they give you the sight beyond sight. Here's our host, Neil Matthews.
Welcome in, one and all. Other People's Shoes is here with you once again. We're in homestretch time, as I call it. It's the last, let's look at the calendar now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shows. April gave us 5 Wednesdays this year. So 5 Wednesdays left after today. You can do the math. 4 Wednesdays left till our season finale. Let me just set the stage for that. I know how the story ends so often as I do. I know how this season ends. We started with a bang. I think we're going to end with a box of Kleenex. Just brace yourself. But before we get to season finale day, we can't be fooled any longer. I don't know about anybody else. Yesterday being April 1st always reminds me of April Fool's Day. And as a child, even as an adult, I may or may not have played my fair share of gotcha April Fool's Day. One in particular, I called my mom. I'll never forget. I called my mom up and I said, Mom, you'll never believe it. I just got a job at the University of North Carolina. They want me to be the basketball information analyst. I made up a job. I didn't even know what that is. Someone has asked a time or two when I've retold this story. I don't know. It sounded official. My mom believed me and she was in tears. She said, I don't want to see you go. Are you sure? This is what God wants you to do. I said, Mom, it's the University of North Carolina. It's my dream school. It's my dream job. And then I said April Fool's Day. And, she oddly enough didn't talk to me for a couple of days. She was really mad. But I wonder about that for us right now as we laugh about that story. But is there things perhaps maybe we're being fooled on? And being tricked into saying, no, this is truth. This is life. This is our new normal. Maybe my guest can shed some light into it all the way from the Hoosier State of ways of Kansas and other places. I mean, who knows where she is? We could even say Carmen San Diego, but we're not. We're going to call her by her name. Welcome in my new friend, Deborah. Deborah, how are you today?
I am great. I am so glad to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you.
What an introduction, too. I always like our introduction. Some people scoff at it. Some people, throw rocks at it. We don't live in a glass house, so we're okay. To me, it's fun. Well, Deborah, help us with this. We love to lead every show with this question, and that's this. What style of shoe might we find you wearing in that Indiana area?
Well, I'm going to have to say, first off, I would probably be barefoot. I'm a little bit on the hippie side, so, barefoot is really the way to go. If I am wearing shoes, it's going to be Birkenstocks all the way, all day, every day, except in winter. And then it's which pair of snow boots am I going to pull out? I kind of have an addiction to snow boots as well. Really, I'm a sandals girl or barefoot.
Why? That sounds just cringeworthy, as the kids would say nowadays. Mm-hmm. You're showing your dogs off. I think my daughter would even say.
Exactly. I am all about the grounding. I want to get out and feel the grass between my toes. I want to dig in the dirt. I just like being out barefoot. I am all about that. Every day, I am not going to be wearing shoes.
I told a past guest, I said in one of our green rooms, I said, listen, I think when God was constructing people, I think he got down to our feet and he's like, I don't know what else to do. What should we do? And he looks at Jesus and the heavenly hosts. He's like, let's just take all these extra parts and put them together and see what happens. That's how we got our feet, in my opinion, because they're the oddest, weirdest, smelliest thing ever. I just feel like.
I have a theory, though. I have always said that I am like the middle toe. How God talks about everybody has a purpose in the church and one's ahead and one's blah, blah, blah. I always felt like the middle toe, which there's no importance for the middle toe, but you can't wear sandals without it. So I think that's why I like sandals, because I can show off my middle toe and then I feel like I have a place.
Wow. That is
very deep.
That was
very
deeper
deep.
than I expected, right? Out of the jump, out of the gate, we're going deep.
That's it.
Look out. Here we come.
It's like Oprah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I've never been compared to Oprah. That's quite the compliment already. Yeah. Thank you. we're in this final home stretch. You are leading the charge down the final home stretch, being the former track runner that I am. Visually can think of now, if I close my eyes, that corner in a track. They call it the last 200. And there's a corner, you come off the corner, and then you hit this straightaway stretch, and it's the home stretch. And you give it all you got. And so these next, no pressure, but these next guests, I really feel like are going to have to give it all they got, because again, it's home stretch time. We've had a great season. We've had some amazing guests. I told you in the green room, I think this season specifically, we've gotten some opportunities that I never thought we'd ever have. And it's happened, and it's been amazing. And so next season's really going to have a lot to live up to. We're not there yet either. Right. Help me with this. When you heard us talking about X-ray and you thought about this idea of an X-ray and this vision and this theme, what did that do to you, and what came to mind in relation to your story?
We all hide something. We go to church. All of us, I'm assuming most of us go to churches, and we sit on the pew every Sunday.
But maybe not.
Even if you home church, maybe like you could turn to your left, your right, and see who's on the couch with you. You don't always know like what they're thinking or who they are or what they're carrying. And I know for me, that was kind of what was happening. Not everybody knew our story. We had just actually moved, as we kind of talked about earlier. We've moved 9 times in my life. When you go to a new place, you have a kind of a place to start over. Then at the same time, nobody kind of knows your story too. When I think of X-ray, I think, what if they could see what was really on the inside? What would they think of me? Does that change who I am? Does that change how they would relate to me? I think that's what I thought when I heard your series for this season.
The part that I'm running into that is still a struggle is some people still have this idea that they can put up this front, they can put up the sign, they can make the grass really green, they can make it look really good on the outside, but deep down inside, there's something still that they've refused to deal with. Or maybe again, they're like, if I revealed that, whatever it may be, I may lose some friends, I may lose some credibility, I may lose something. And I think the reality is at least for me, I want to live, especially in 2025, I really want to live that authentic and maybe more authenticity, big words to say, and even to walk out life. Is that true of you, do you feel like?
I really love the verse in Revelation where it says we will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. If we are not sharing our testimonies, we're not going to overcome. We're not going to help other people overcome the things that they're dealing with. And so I think it's so important that we just kind of take off those church clothes and just come as we are and start talking about real things. We got to get past happy Jesus church sometimes and just go deeper with people.
I feel like you're on this crusade in some respects. And I have a copy of the book. I actually brought it with me right here.
It's awesome.
It's sitting right off camera from us. I know we don't do camera. All those people keep saying, do camera, Neil. One day, maybe. But not
Thank
yet.
goodness you don't do camera.
Not yet. We're not camera ready yet. There's a project coming, perhaps. When I look at this book, if I'm going to describe it to our listeners, because that's the best part sometimes, I feel like when we can see it, it takes away the imagination element. And maybe that's why I'll never do video. But it's a white backdrop, and it's almost got this different facets of all the colors, the array of all the colors. And it says in the book binding, or the book back, I guess you could say, it says battle cry. What does that mean to you?
It means that there's a war going on. And somebody has got to lead a group in charge and go and fight the war. I think for me, that's what battle cry is. It's time to use my voice, and it's time to use the gifts God gave me and go out and fight this war that we are in for our families, for our kids.
And I think the obvious question is some people would say, listen, I didn't know we were at war. I thought Afghanistan was done. I thought Iraq was done. What war is Deborah talking about? I'm not familiar with said war. Where have I been? Did I miss ABC News update? What is it?
I would say I completely understand that. I probably didn't realize that there was an enemy after our families as well. I raised my kids in church. We went to church. We went to Sunday school, went to Christian school, went to Christian college. We did all of those things. I don't think I realized that there was an enemy after my family. I don't think anybody made me really aware that Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And he is after every one of our children in our families. It's not just people that you see on TV or people that live on the East Coast or whatever. He's after every single family, even us little Midwest families. When I think of the spiritual war that we were in, I wish someone would have told me when my kids were little, hey, Mom, do you know that someone is after your kids? I always kind of blame myself for that I didn't realize the intensity that Satan was after our kids. I love to just sit down with people and not scare them, but prepare them that we need to do more than just go to church. We need to do more than just talk about spiritual things, just happy Jesus, going to heaven and all of these things. We need to talk about hard things, and we need to talk about overcoming hard things, and we need to get real with our kids. That's one thing that I wish I would have maybe done differently. And I love to tell young parents that if I could do it all over again, I would not take my kids to church. And when I say that, what I mean is I would take them to Jesus. I wish I would have spent less time taking them to church and more time taking them to Jesus, teaching them things of the Holy Spirit, more of a personal relationship. I wish those are the things I would have focused on more than just going to church on a Sunday.
So what would you say the greatest battle that is facing our young people today? Again, your opinion, not necessarily anyone else's.
Totally.
Deborah's opinion. What is that?
We have this little thing called the internet. It's just so easy for kids to connect with groups and people and things and be exposed to ideas and things that maybe like our generation wasn't exposed to at younger ages. I think there's just this whole world just in their laps now. And it's just so hard to know how to monitor and how to what your kids are seeing and who's talking to them and what are they even hearing at school. We can't even guarantee anymore really what our kids are hearing at school. It's just so hard to know. Part of you wants to just let's just put the kids in the closet and shut the door and it's all going to be great. Turn off the electricity. We can't have internet. But we also know that we're trying to prepare our kids to go out in the world. A city on a hill has a light is going to shine. It's that fine balance of how do we prepare our kids to be the light of Christ into a dark world, actually let them go to the dark world without the dark world getting to them.
If everything stays true. So we're going to knock on wood in this moment. My daughter should be graduating high school.
Yeah.
And that's hard still for me to understand that that's really going to happen. I'm one that doesn't delete pictures very often. It's a hard thing to do. And on my phone, I have a lot of pictures from her when she was younger, kind of middle, and then somewhat present now. Very little of the present now. She's not a big dad take my picture kind of person. She hates it when we do that. I know where her identity rides. She knows where she's going. She kind of has a good direction. She's much like her mom. She's set in her ways. She's very stubborn like her mom. I didn't say that, but that might be an Easter egg. She acts like me, which is dangerous. Sometimes she speaks first and then listens second, which is dangerous. The flip side of that, I am thankful and grateful we walked through high school with very little boyfriend interaction. Very little. And I'm okay with that. I celebrate that, actually. That wasn't true with my wife and I. My wife and I started dating our junior year of high school. We were pretty much inseparable since. But we dealt with the boyfriend-girlfriend drama, dynamic, all the things that came with that. With that being said, the hard part for me sometimes is I look at youngsters today, young people today, and I feel like, and I'm making a broad statement here, but I still feel like there is this idea that they don't know who they are.
Right.
They sort of know who they are. Now it seems like nowadays kids want to change their name. They want to change their identity. They want to change their gender. They want to change their faith, if they even have a faith. Most of the kids I know nowadays don't want to have anything to do with church, big church word.
Right.
Youth group numbers, I would imagine across the country are probably down. I don't have any stats or data to back that up. I bet the Barna group does. So those that are interested can fact check me and see. Barna does a lot of church studies, by the way. If you've never heard of them, maybe look into them. That's for anyone not knowing who Barna is. But what I'm wondering about for you, are you seeing the same thing in your neck of the woods or your experience with this whole gender ideology? This, I don't want to be Molly anymore, girl name, I want to be now Sam. Or am I alone in Oregon in that?
No, I think this is not just a little itty bitty state problem. This is now a global issue, and it's a global church issue that we're not talking about. Just kind of like you said, I think personally, I believe this generation, they're into labels. Have you noticed that? Like they love labels. They want to be called ADD. They want to be called OCD.
They're
They
like
want a
label makers. They like became
They
label makers. And
are.
I'm like, I hate label makers, but I love them because I love to organize. No, I don't love to organize. What am I saying?
Everybody wants a label. It's like it's a badge of honor to have a label behind your name now. Almost all of them that I know do. Everybody's like on the spectrum. I mean, that's real big right now. Everybody's somehow on the spectrum. And it's just, we are finding our identity, I guess, is what I think. All these kids in this generation in everything except Jesus. And that is where we have got to figure it out and get back to how we can have them find their identity in him. That's the only label that matters, is child of the king.
Well, I remember, again, time machine time, 1990, we'll say. Roughly 1990, 1991. That's a long time for some of you people that are like,
Yes.
wow, that was a minute ago, Neil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or right around that era. You talk about labels. Somebody put a label on me that I've hated for years. Mm-hmm. And that label was, well, Neil, you have dyslexia. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I have fought against said label my whole life. I don't like to talk about it. I don't like to acknowledge that I have it. When someone says, well, why does your brain work that way? Or why does this happen that way? I immediately say, well, I just learn differently. And they're like, oh, so you have like a learning disability? And even in that, I get like my skin crawls like there's a spider on me.
Too.
I don't like that. But again, I feel like if I was a kid nowadays and somebody were to slap that label on me in middle school or elementary school or maybe even high school, I'd wear like a badge of honor. I'd have like a backwards...
You'd be like, guess what I got? Yeah.
I've had dyslexia backwards like on a t-shirt, I feel like nowadays, and everybody would rally around me and I'd have more followers on Instagram and my TikTok could probably blow up because I have dyslexia. And it's like...
Yes.
I don't want that badge. It seems, again, like people are doing it. I'll give you a prime example that's in my circle, and this is a hard one maybe to tell. My sister has a child. I don't know the reason. I've asked. Her name is Keely. That's how I call her. Now, she has since wanted to change that to something else and change her gender to something else. But at Christmas time, this last Christmas, I actually said to her face to face, Keely, listen, I don't know what you want to be, but Uncle Neil is only going to call you what your name is. Your mom gave you the name Keely, and that's how I know you, and that's how I will call you. And in my mind, you're a girl.
Right.
And my sister and wife and my mom are like, yeah, stop talking. One of those moments, right? For me, I wanted her to know where I stood. I didn't want there to be any gray. I didn't want there to be any, well, how does he feel? Now you know. That was important for me to tell her that. Why are we so, as adults, and now again, I'm going to maybe put you into this, are you, like me, maybe a little apprehensive to make those declarations to folks? And if so, maybe some parents may hear you and say, listen, I'm with Neil's wife and Neil's sister and Neil's mom. I don't want to make those declarations. It's not my place to make those. I shouldn't speak out. But you're saying, no, this is the what? Fill in that blank.
I completely agree. I think each person probably will come to this from a different standpoint. For me personally, as a born-again evangelical Christian, I believe that God has chosen and given us our kids, and he made them perfect. All of these changes that our kids are declaring and making, the enemy is the one that comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He is the voice of confusion in this world. That doesn't come from God. For me, I am not going to lie to somebody. This is something that we are dealing with. 7 years ago, my oldest child called us and said, Mom, I'm transgender. And at that time, 7 years ago, I'm going to be honest, I didn't even know what that word meant. I really, honestly didn't even know what that word meant. It came out of nowhere so much that you could have told me the Pope was coming over to eat dinner, and that would have made more sense to me. That's how much of a complete shock it was to our family. As we have grown and learned and wrestled with this for 7 years, from the very beginning, I was very honest with my child that I love my child. Right after that phone call ended, the first thing I heard God say to me was, it is your job to love your child. It is my job to save him. I knew for me personally that I had to go forward in love. I also was going to go forward in the truth. I wasn't going to sugarcoat something. If your mom doesn't love you and doesn't speak truth to you, who's going to? And that's what I held in my heart from the very beginning, was that it is my job as a mom to love unconditionally. I am still a mama bear. I will cut you. You come after my kid. I mean, I still as mama bear as they make. At the same time, I'm going to believe God's best for my child. And I'm going to pray for God's best for my child. I'm going to love them where they're at. I'm never going to stop loving them, but I won't lie to them as well.
Well, first off, I want to acknowledge what you just said there, the vulnerability to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's easy to do. Maybe 7 years ago, it might not have been. Maybe now it's a little
still
easier.
not. I have found my voice over the last several years. And of course, with the book coming out, there's no turning back. There's still days now I'm like, well, maybe I should have said that. I have to speak the truth. At the end of my life, I'm going to stand before the Lord and answer for the things I did, not for what my kid did, not for what you've done. I'm going to answer for my life and the things I did. And was I obedient to the call and speaking the truth to people? That's where I was coming from. I am in a really good situation. I'm really close with my child. Not everybody has that. I realize in this kind of array of emotions that come with this topic, we're really close. We have pretty good conversations about these types of things. And he knows that I am never going to compromise my love for Jesus and my Christian values. And he's never asked me to. I think that's a little bit different. Not everybody has that good communication that we have. I'm not going to lie to him.
Did you ever struggle with the idea of failing as a parent somehow because of your son's choices?
Absolutely. At the very beginning, I could hardly get out of bed for a month. I didn't know which way was up. I didn't know if God loved him. I didn't know if God loved me because I just assumed I had only heard about perfect Christian parents. I didn't really know anybody struggling, and I sure did not know anybody walking through this. I didn't know who to turn to, what to do, what to say. And you just take on all this shame and all this guilt. And you start going through your mind of, well, we went to the ballet one time. Maybe that caused this. Maybe we watched the wrong show on TV. Your mind starts playing tricks on you. The things you did. Well, you skipped church one Wednesday night. That's probably it. Satan just comes in and starts accusing you. At the very beginning, I know for me, it was just so much emotion. It's easy to believe those lies because I didn't know how to stand. I didn't know what I was going to stand on. I always like to say what that phone call was like. There's a famous picture of the tsunami that hit Thailand. Was it been about 15 years ago now? And it's this picture of all of these people on the beach. And all of a sudden, they're just having a great day on the beach. But someone took a picture from like up on a balcony. And if you look clear out on the horizon, you see this wave coming in. And these people had no idea this wave was getting ready to hit them. And that is what it was like for me. My kids, I'd raised them. They were adults. They were in college on their own. I was sitting back on my beach house waiting for the grandkids to roll in the next journey. And I had no idea what was getting ready to hit me. And when that wave hit, everything was gone in a minute. And I had to decide, am I on sinking sand or is my house built on the rock of Jesus Christ? And am I going to make it? And that is, I think, for each of us, and it could be any scenario. It doesn't even have to be parenting. We're all one phone call away from a changed life. Whenever that wave comes in, you have to ask yourself, are you standing on the rock of Jesus Christ or are you on sinking sand and it's all going to go away?
I'm thinking about your book right now. I've heard it said, I don't know for a fact because I've never written one, but I've done a number of shows now,
Yeah.
which are sort of like books. There's a creative process, I believe, at least in my world. There's a theme, there's some chapters, i.e. guests, and there's a publication that happens. There's a releasing of the episode. And in that, I've guested on shows from time to time, which I don't often do because I don't like it.
Right.
Not saying I'm against it, but giving up the control of asking the questions, maybe.
Right.
I was on a show a while back, a number of years back now, actually. And the host asked me, which I think is the worst question to ask a podcaster, by the way. They said, what's your favorite episode? And I thought, that is a horrible question. I can never answer that. And so I flipped that around now. And I'm like, I'm going to ask authors.
Everything. Yeah.
What was the hardest chapter for you to write?
I had already turned in my manuscript. Of course, I just assumed it was the best thing they'd ever, read ever, because probably didn't even need an editor. It was so good. My B- in English got me really far in the writing process. My editor called me one day and she was like, yeah, so where are we at with that forgiveness thing for yourself? And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, you've wrote this book and you've talked about all these things, but you haven't said that you've forgiven yourself, and have you gotten past that? I really had to think about it. And I was like, well, I haven't. At this point, we were 4 or 5 years in, and I realized I was still carrying so much shame and so much pain from it that I hadn't, even though I was starting to talk about it and write about it and speak about it, I hadn't honestly done that heart work of just going to God and just laying it down. And so that for me was probably the hardest chapter to write, was just about the process I went through to forgive myself.
When you talk about going to seek forgiveness with God, who is involved in that process? If I were to say, hey, I'm going to go to God and seek forgiveness on being mean to my kid, or bad thought I had about a coworker, or person cut me off in traffic and I said some mean things about, they never heard it, but I said some mean things, which was disparaging to them, dishonors God because that's God's creation. Who does that involve? Who are the parties involved when you talk about going to God for forgiveness?
I think that's anybody. Anybody that has a burden that they need to lay down, whether that burden is the shame like I was going through, whether that's guilt that someone has done something, whatever that is, it was separating me. And I didn't even realize it, that it was still separating me from that closeness with God. I felt like he hated me. I still felt like he's like, this is the worst mother. I picked the wrong mother for this family, for this child. Look what she's done. I mean, that was in my mind. These were the things that I was honestly thinking. I think it's for anybody that is carrying something in their heart. We have these churches, and I love big churches. I love all churches. We have gotten away from the altar. We have gotten away in so many churches of that sacred spot of going to the altar. And we can go to the altar in our homes. We can bow down. We can pray anywhere. We all know that. But there's something so sacred about in church going to the altar and just laying stuff down and leaving it there. And that's what I had to do. I had to physically go to the altar, and I had to just lay my child down, and I had to lay my hopes and dreams down, and I had to lay my shame down and guilt and say, no more. I did what I did to the best of my ability, and I planted seeds and I pointed them to you. And God, now they're yours, and you have to grow those seeds and you have to bring them in. It is the kindness of God that leads us to repentance, and it's the Holy Spirit that drives people in. I can't do it. If I could get people saved, if I could just do it for them, I would have already done it. But I can't. That's God is going to have to draw people in. And so I had to just lay that down. And I think that's what everybody needs to do. If you're at a crossroads in your life, you got to go to the altar. Just run as fast as you can to get there and just give it to God.
In that process of giving that to God, it's you and who else would be there? Just him, right?
Just him and me.
So it's a
Holy
one-on-one relationship is what you're describing, right? One and one.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
A one.
Yeah. I don't need my pastor to be there. It's just between me and God, just going and saying, he already knows these things. I always love that. He already knows these things. He already knows what we're going to say before we get there, but he's waiting on us to go and just open our mouths and pour out everything that we're holding and give it to him. And so, it's a one-on-one thing. And that is what relationship is. It is about the good, the bad, and the ugly. God isn't just this God up on a shelf. He's down in the mud with you. He is down there. His word says in Psalms, he collects our tears. And if we honestly believe that, then how are we not believing that he's in it with us and holding us? I had to really just get past that spot of I was stuck in the mud, and he had to be like, come on, you're getting out today.
Well, I bring that up for a reason. I'm looking at your book. I'm looking at the table of contents. Your chapter on forgiving yourself is chapter 11, a one and one. That one-on-one relationship needed to be restored.
Oh, that's good.
I'm going to go further. I'm going
to write that down and use that later. No,
You can. I didn't trademark it. I'm going to go further. Okay. Your chapter on forgiving yourself, which is what it's called, Forgiving Myself. Your chapter on that starts on page 105. Now, for some, they're like, so what? It's 105, Neil. Again, going back to that one being God, there's a zero in between it. You're feeling like a zero as a mom. And I think always when I see the number 5 as a pregnant mom, that's how I taught the kids 10 commandments back in the day, it was a 5 because the 5 looks like it's got a belly. I mean, we all know what a 5 looks like.
Right.
And there's this mom that is separated from God, this zero, this gap, this emptiness in between, because that's what zero represents, is nothing. And if you're not forgiving yourself as a mom, you're feeling empty. You got to get back to that one-on-one relationship.
That, you are Oprah now because I've got tears in my eyes. That is, now you're officially into that whole Oprah thing. But, that is, It just reminds me.
I just picked that out. I'm just saying, I just painted a picture with that. That's all. Anybody could have done that. I'm just saying.
So beautiful. And God's plan, it's even these little details, something that I have overlooked. I would never have even thought of that. He gave that word of knowledge to you to share. That is beautiful. I mean, he cares about the details. That could have been on page 142, but it wasn't, because God is perfect in his plan. And I love that so much.
I look for images, maybe. I look for the image. I look for the picture, the easy way to remember things. That 105, that mom that's feeling empty, that's feeling separated, that's feeling, I can't make that connection with God. And maybe this isn't you. Maybe this is. Maybe these shoes don't fit you. So if they don't, that's fine. But I do wonder about those moms out there who have said, I have failed. And they start taking the sin, because that's what I believe it is. I'm just going to put it out there. It is what it is. That's what it is in my mind. You can't tell me otherwise.
Right.
That they start taking the sin of their child and putting it on themselves and somehow thinking, I can then be the sin benefactor. I can then redeem. I can do all the things to get my child redeemed. And it's a weird, warped theology. There's no one that can take away my sin. There's nobody, I can't pay my sin forward. I can't give all my sin to my wife and then she does all the awesome stuff because she's awesome. And then my sin's gone. That's not how it works.
Right.
If you ever felt like that somehow you had to take on, or you took on your son's sins as, again, that failure, that zero, that emptiness, that, well, I'll just take it on. I'll just take more of it on. Because that's what moms do. You guys tend to take more on.
It's who we are.
More on.
It's who we are.
And dads are over in the corner sipping the coffee going, I don't know what your problem is, babe. Come on, get with it.
What?
Is that you, or am I wrong in that?
No, I think definitely that's part of it. I know at the beginning, I think I even prayed prayers like that. Lord, if someone has to be sent to hell, or if someone has to suffer from this, let it be me. Let it be me. Don't let it be my kid. Let it be me. Us moms, we're willing to do that too for our kids. We can't, like you said, we can't. We have to just give them to God and know that somehow, some way, he's a redeemer. And he is going to restore and redeem.
Would you love him less if he didn't redeem your son?
That's a very good question. And I've had to come to a lot of terms with answering that question. Is God still good? Even if he doesn't do this. Just this week, I was reading a Daniel, and I was reading the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when the king brings them in, is like, hey, I heard y'all aren't going to bow down and do this thing. And they just launched into this whole speech of God could deliver us. He could do this. But even if, I want you to know today, King, that he is still good and we still serve him. And that is the desire of my heart. So even if I get to the end of my life and I don't see that redemption before I go to heaven, God is still good. He is still good, and he is still worthy to be praised. And I give him all the glory. And I know that he is going to make all things right. He takes all of our ashes and makes something beautiful out of them. Satan has stolen a lot from us. He has stolen our close family. He's stolen grandkids. He has stolen so much, but he's not going to steal my joy. That I could give away. You can't have joy stolen. You can have happiness come and go and sadness come and go, but joy you give away. And that's your choice to keep it or not. From the beginning, decided that I am going to be full of joy and I am going to serve the Lord with joy and gladness. And Satan is not going to steal that from me.
Well, Deborah, help us with this. Why do you feel like you needed to speak out? Why did you feel like that was such a calling on your life? A lot of people are kind of staying silent, I feel like, in this arena, especially in the evangelical spaces that I run in. I'm hearing a lot of silence from my friends. Nobody wants to be the bad guy.
Nobody wants to touch that.
Yeah.
Even with
it's like Pigpen. It's like Pigpen from Peanuts. Nobody wants to be around that kid.
I got a lot of no's when I was trying to sell this book. From the very beginning, I promised myself 3 things: that if I could find a way out of this pain, that I would never stop believing that God was a God of miracles and that nothing was too hard for him. I promised myself I would start a support group for moms like me, moms that had prodigal kids and didn't have anywhere to turn. And I promised myself the one thing I didn't want to do, but I promised that if I had a chance, I would tell my story every chance I got. Even if I cried the whole time, even if I didn't say the right verb, which I probably haven't. It is what it is. Promised myself those 3 things. From the very beginning, my story actually goes back 20 some years earlier. I was raised a good little Southern Baptist girl, and I have such deep roots because of that. Back about 20 years ago, I started having these dreams. At first, I was like, well, those are weird. I don't know what to do with those. I've never had this kind of thing happen before. Now I kind of know, 20 years fast forward, that I was started to have these prophetic dreams, and God started giving me dreams. 20 years ago, I saw myself on a stage talking about a book I had written. I never told a soul that. I would go places to visit a church or whatever, and strangers would come up to me and be like, God told me to tell you that you're going to write a book. And I just kind of kept that knowledge all of these years. And so I just assumed that the book would always be about how to have these perfect kids and raise great little Billy Grahams and how to be a perfect parent. It never occurred to me that maybe the book would be about something hard. When this all first happened, and one of the very, very first thoughts I had was, are you kidding me, God? Are you serious now, Clark? That's what you want to say. Like, are you really going to have me talk about this? I couldn't believe it. And I said, absolutely not. Never will I discuss this with anybody. And here we are 7 years later. God opened so many doors for me to write this book, and a publisher that said yes. And it's just been such a journey. And I'm so thankful that this message is getting out there, because there's so many moms just like me that are sitting in church every Sunday, broken on the back row. They don't know what to do, and nobody is telling them and helping them. Write about in the book how I found out really quickly early on that there were kind of two doors in a church. You had the door over here that said, you need to turn them out. It's sin. They're going to hell. Just don't even talk to your kids anymore. And then there was this door over here that said, oh no, we're going to affirm everything. It's all fine. Jesus loves us all. And, I found myself in the middle going, this isn't right. This isn't what God has for anybody. But at the same time, I still love my child. I always say I can't hate him to heaven, but I refuse to love him straight to hell. And so I'm going to love him in the truth. And so this whole message is a God message for this hour. This message, this whole agenda that is out there, it's not going away. It's not going to die down. We have got to arm ourselves with the word of God and know how to pray against it and how to pray for our parents that are going through it and not turning them away.
I think there's so many people that want to do the right thing, that want to say the right thing, but they're so afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing. And to me, what I hear you saying is, even if you stay silent, that's still saying something.
Yes.
Why is that?
Absolutely. There's a couple of different stories in the book, but one of them that I'll kind of talk about is we had moved and I was at this Bible study. It was a new Bible study I'd been going to for about 6 months. Wonderful women, loved them all, absolutely adored the Bible study. But one night, the whole topic went to this LGBTQ and all of that. The comment was made by a couple of the moms in the group that they sent their kids to Christian school because they didn't want their kids around those kids. And something in me broke that night. And I went to the bathroom, locked myself in the bathroom at this lady's house and bawled for 30 minutes. That's when I realized those kids, those are God's children. We can't have the hatred of their sin greater than God's love for them. And if we're only telling this whole generation how much God hates them, they're never going to know how much he loves them. And I knew at that moment that I had a responsibility to step up and speak truth to people and to say, there are people, there are good families going through this. I knew right then and there that was the night that I decided that I could be silent no longer.
By the way, the prodigal story is by far one of my favorites outside of Jesus and salvation and coming back again. It's one of my favorites. The woman caught in the act of adultery when he writes on the ground, also one of my favorites. Lazarus coming out of the tomb, one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
But this one still ranks pretty high. And I'll tell you why. Each time I think about it, each time I study it, each time I am in conversation about it, I struggle because I'm like, okay, which part of the players am I? You got the dad, you got the older brother, you got the younger brother. Those are the main characters. And then they don't talk about them, but I think you got the staff.
Right.
The staff that watched it all, that was there during it all.
Yeah.
The staff that prepared the meal when he came home and the fatted calf gets killed and the party goers. You got the staff that put the ring on him and that put the robe on him. They watched the father as the younger son was being prodigal. I have an older brother right now. Still, I haven't talked to him in probably 10 years. Tim, I've talked to you more today than I've talked to him. I'll just, that just gives you an idea. I struggle with that story because each time I'm like, okay, where am I in this story? Who am I? So I'm going to ask you that. Deborah, right now, who are you in the story of the prodigal son?
Right now, today, I am definitely running out after him. I am running. I am on the horizon. I'm just sitting on the porch watching for him to come home. I love that story as well because there's like you said, there's so many different little angles. Like, and you go, scene 1, scene 2. If we think of your church today, I don't know where you go to church. You don't know where I go to church. Think about even your listeners. I want them to think about your church today. If a blue-haired transgender person walked into your church today, would they meet God or would they meet the older brother if he ran out to meet him first? Who would they meet that day? I always think if the older brother would have ran past the father and got out to his brother and said, you stink, turn around. You do not belong here. What would have happened?
I'll even use the phrase, get the hell out of here.
You know it, and
that's
I know
where,
it.
That's where you belong. That's where you belong. Take
Right.
your blue hair, take your ideology, and go that way. That's where you belong.
And you know what? There was a time in my life, I probably would have been that person too.
Samesies.
I am so thankful. I thank God all the time for the story that he chose us to allow us to walk through this. What I have learned from this whole story, I always say it has nothing to do with my child. It has to do with me and my faith and the way I view God now. I would never have learned the truths about the gospel that I know now had I not been walking through this. And I am forever grateful for that.
Well, I believe God uses everything to draw us closer to him.
Yeah.
I've heard parents say they've lost children, and because of that, they've been drawn closer to God.
Yeah.
I've heard now you say it sounds like that because of this reason, you've now drawn closer to him. Now, some would push on that and say, well, did he allow that to happen to draw you closer to him? That's up for him to decide or to tell us.
We don't have time to, well, that's your problem. I'm not.
I will tell you something that you said that sparked me, and that's the word redemption. You can't see it, but it's on a bracelet I wear right now. It says redemption. It's in light blue, in case anyone's wondering. It's a reminder to me to give redemption to those who seek it. Now, here's the difference in my scenario. If a blue-haired person, transgender person came to my church, my first question would be, great, we're glad you're here. You can't stay in that lifestyle, but we're going to love you out of it.
Right.
We're going to love you out of it. We think it's wrong. You know it's wrong. Why else are you here? You want to stay in that lifestyle, just any other lifestyle you could think of. If somebody had a gambling addiction, if somebody had a porn addiction, if somebody had a gossiping addiction, if somebody had a stealing addiction, whatever it may be, that drug of choice, that lifestyle of choice, beating their wife, whatever it may be, hurting their kids, whatever it may be, the sin doesn't matter. It's the sinner that matter. And again, if somebody came in with the redemption heart saying, listen, I've struggled with transgenderism, I'm in that right now, I want to get free of that, somebody woke me up, Deborah's book woke me up, whatever it may be, I want to get free of that, but I don't know how. That's a different conversation. Now, if somebody wants to stay in it and they want to join our church, that might be a different animal. That might be a different conversation.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
But I'm going to welcome you in because I want to know where you're at. I want to know what your condition is, like a hospital.
You can't speak love into people without relationship. And so if you're not having relationship with people, you're never going to be able to speak truth to them. If I was to go on a rant right now and start talking about the sins of the people, it would go to their heads, be talking to their heads. We have to quit talking to people's heads and start talking to their hearts. We have got to get over the facts of of what we think and start talking to people's hearts.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better. Well, Deborah, as we finish up today, where can folks get their copy like I have my copy? Where can they go to get it? How can they connect with you? If there's ways that they're like, that Deborah lady spoke some truth. I like what she's saying. I want to know more. How can they do that? What's the best place? Are you a social gal? You sound like a social gal, but I mean, as far as like social media, is there a platform of choice you like better than another?
First, if you're a mom, and you're listening to this, or if you're whoever you are and you know a mom or an aunt or whoever that has a child of any kind of prodigal, I started a group and it's called Battle Cry Moms, and it's its own social media network. It has nothing to do with the major players. It's its own certain little special thing. And we have 1,300 moms, grows every single day. And we have moms that have LGBTQ kids. We have moms that have alcoholic kids. We have moms that have kids in prison. And we have moms that have kids that just simply don't believe. But we come together and we pray and we believe together that our families are going to be restored and that our kids are coming home. And so please join us at battlecrymoms.com. We have a Battle Cry Dads as well. It's smaller. It's not that big because it's hard to get dads to be joiners. If you're a dad and you're listening to this, please join us at battlecrydads.com. My book, you can get it on Amazon. You can go to my website, deborahmcninch.com. I write sometimes there. We have merch, we have mugs, we have t-shirts, all the things. I also have a pack. You can go on and order. I call it a Prodigal Sunday package on my website. And you can go and put in your church or your pastor, and you can order a package, and I will send them a book and some resources for your church to have a Prodigal Sunday. So in all of this, it is my hope that churches partner with moms and dads that have prodigal children. They devote time, a special service every year, month, quarter, whatever it is, for praying for the prodigals. And so go on and you can order a Prodigal Sunday pack, and I would love to send that to your church for some resources.
Absolutely. I'll give it to our community pastor and see what they do with it. Hopefully they use it. That would be the goal.
Yes. And I would love to come out. I would come speak to your women's group. I'd speak to your church. You can just call me and we can have coffee over the computer, whatever. But I'm always available to talk to anybody that needs a friend.
Well, Deborah, I feel like we need some giggles. We had some serious stuff. You had some tears, but I feel like we need to end with some giggles. You seem like a giggle gal. Yeah. That's on its way to being trademarked. So Giggle Gal cups will be coming shortly. Let's play our fastest growing game in the podcast community, and that is Heel Hustle. Zach, take it away.
It's now that time in the show to play the fastest growing game in the podcast world. We call it Heel Hustle. Today our guest will try to answer all 6 of these questions in 60 seconds or less to win an Amazon gift card. Amazon not responsible for this commercial spot, nor did they pay to let us use their name. Audience, feel free to play at home. Are you ready? Let's put 60 seconds on that clock. Ready, set, hustle!
The game begins in 3, 2, 1.
All right, Deborah, one person you would trade places with for a week.
Oh my goodness. Can I say the president? And this is why. Because I would make a law that sports cannot overlap. Baseball season cannot overlap. Football season cannot overlap. Basketball cannot overlap soccer. Everything gets a season and then there's a break in between.
I don't like that. Guilty pleasure in life.
Oh gosh. I like 4 things. Jesus, glitter, cupcakes, and coffee.
Nice.
Those are my things.
All right. Best compliment you ever received?
One time I was a preschool teacher many moons ago, and one of my moms told me that I glowed of Jesus, and I would never forgot that.
Aww. Worst piece of advice ever?
Have kids, they said. It'd be fun, they said. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke.
All right, that's our game. We ran out of time, but that's okay. We're going to finish up. What's something you wish you were better at?
Oh gosh. I have a thing where each year I learn a new skill. It's something I've done for years. And so I take a new skill every year and try to learn it and get better at something. Whether it's painting or sewing or wood crafts, or last year it was refinishing furniture.
What's this year's skill? Inquiring minds want to know.
I'm working on fermenting things. I want to become a fermenter.
Okay. Fermenting things. All right. What is something that never fails to make you laugh? You cannot say Neil.
Oh my goodness. That's one thing about me. Like, I just get the giggles, and don't ever take me to a funeral because I will just start laughing. If it's a serious moment, I'm going to find something funny going on. I'm just one of those people that I'm always looking for something odd in the crowd, something funny going on. But kids, I've taught preschool for years. So little kids, oh my gosh, I love them so much. They always make me laugh.
That's great. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate you taking some time, not only away from your family, whatever you had going on. We always value your time and appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you for having me, and thank you for starting this conversation.
All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, that is it. That is all. That is our show today. As I mentioned, home stretch time is upon us. Now we can say it officially. 1, 2, 3, 4 shows left on this amazing season 19 season. Before we go, my takeaway from today. I said I love the prodigal story, and I meant it. But the flip side of it is, turn that coin over. I hate that story too. I'll tell you why I hate it. Because I've struggled with the fact that the dad comes running. I hate that. Because maybe for some of you, you're like, my dad never came running for me. Maybe for some of you, you think, I hate that story because the older brother never cared for me. Maybe that's part of your story too. Maybe some of you say, I hate that story because there's no mom in that story. So why would God even care about me? I'm a mom. Okay, I take all that. We're going to put it in a blender. We're going to chop it up. Let's get beyond that. Who in your life needs that phone call? Deborah said it. It used to be a song years ago. I'm one phone call away. So who's that one phone call you need to make today? Let me know. OPSpodcast.com is a great place to let me know. You can let us know on the socials at OPS Podcast Show on our Facebook, Instagram, and X. Before we go, don't forget this too. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I want to thank you so much for listening. I do not take that for granted. And stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.